NFL Outdated. This is the Wide World of Sports series, and I am joined by current CFL offensive lineman Derek Dennis to talk about the Canadian Football League and also his days in the NFL arena and all of that. I'm excited. Thanks for joining me.
I appreciate you having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, any day I get to talk about football is a good day, and especially with someone who's played the football and is currently playing. So definitely want to first dig into kind of obviously your college days and then your transition to the NFL. Talk a little bit about what you obviously experienced making that transition to pro.
It was a lot of ups and downs of it. Transition didn't go as smoothly as I thought it would. In the sense of just understanding the overall aspect of the business, right? I think a lot of people, especially fans, their idea of what being a professional athlete is, especially in the game of professional football, is kind of warped on what they see in the media, right? And unless you get a chance to get behind the veil and see exactly the inner workings of how everything works, you realize it's a lot more to it than just being good at the game of football. So, everything about this business is about relationships. Kind of he said, she said, having some type of continuity, comfortability, and it's all about just finding your way, kind of in, right? So, for me, coming out of college, I was a guy who pretty much was like a utility knife. I didn't have a set position because I pretty much played everywhere. I mean, to kind of go from the origin, I wasn't really a football player growing up. I'm from New York City. If you can't tell, again,
Yeah.
I'm a New Yorker. So in New York, football is not a game that kids grow up and wanting to play. It's not like a Texas or Florida or California, or the places where Ohio, places where football is kind of like king, right?
Right.
Football is kind of an afterthought, right? And my whole life, I grew up wanting to be a basketball player. Everything I did was
Mhm.
basketball up until my
Mhm.
senior year of high school. Is when I finally, played football, and just from people seeing my, I guess, raw potential, everyone always kind of put the bug in my ear that football was going to be the path for me to get to where I am today, right? So for me, I was always a basketball kid, didn't really care much about football, didn't know anything about the game. So when I got to college, I was raw. Like when I
Mhm.
say raw, only thing I knew about football was see ball, get ball. That was pretty much the only rule I knew, and that's kind of what I used in high school to be somewhat successful. So when I got to
Mhm.
college, it was all about learning how to play the game, understanding the lingo, understanding the mentality of being a football player. I had no clue of what that was when I got to college. So my college career was pretty much my introduction to the game. Some guys play the game when they're 6 years old, Pop Warner, they get a chance to kind of mold themselves. So by the time they hit high school, they're pretty much super advanced, right? Me, I was pretty much starting from scratch. So everything, even to this day, like I tell people, I'm still learning a whole lot about the game of football because I haven't been in it as long as some guys have. So, um, my college transition was just getting myself acclimated to becoming a football player, getting myself entrenched into loving the game and loving the process and learn being a student of the game and just getting better and better every year. I didn't have a set position like I said before. I played everything. Played center, played guard, played tackle. I was pretty much utility knife. I was such a good athlete for such a big guy that I was pretty much a plug and play for my coaches. So wherever there was a weakness, put Derek there, he'll fix it type of thing. So that's kind of what my college career was.
Yeah,
So
I was
yeah.
gonna say, like, when you got to college, I mean, yeah, I went to Iowa, and obviously I didn't play college ball, but I had friends that were on the team, and I just saw them, like, their bodies have to transform to especially linemen and like even tight ends. Like, did
Mhm.
you have to have like a diet to kind of get to the size that you needed to be an offensive lineman?
Yeah, my diet was I was on a seafood diet and that was whatever if it was food, eat it type of thing. So
Yeah, yeah,
um yeah, I was like I want to say 265 when I got to college as a freshman. And my freshman year I played offensive line. I was around between 265, 270, which in college football is pretty light for a lineman. So
hmm
I put on pretty much when I graduated college, I was about 325. So I put on essentially about like 60, 70 pounds in 4 years, like to,
Wow.
get myself to that point. So, and it was like every year coaches was telling me I had to gain 10, 15 pounds. And it wasn't like, no, hey, this is the plan to get you there. It was kind of like hey, you need to be at this weight by the time camps, do whatever you got to do to get to this weight type of thing. So,
Wow.
um, yeah, it was actually 1 year in college. I had my going into my sophomore year, I had gained maybe I think 20 pounds. So I think I want to say like 20 or 30 pounds. And it just felt horrible because I wasn't used to being that big. And I used to tell my coaches, like, I don't know if I can get this big. I'm not comfortable with it.
Mhm.
And I lost weight going into camp. So like I showed up to camp, I think I was like 290.
Oh, wow.
And my coaches were like livid. They like kicked me off the field. They told me don't come back until I'm 315. And they told me I had 2 weeks before the first game to get to 315. So I literally, like, I couldn't practice. They basically just made me eat about 5 times a day. Told me to like load up my trays. If they saw me in the calf when we had team meals, if I didn't have enough food on my tray, they would make me go up there and get more. And they told me I couldn't leave until the tray was empty, type of thing. Like that's just
Wow.
that was the world the world of college football for me. So yeah,
Yeah,
that was pretty much my transition.
what's it like, obviously, you're athletically, but I mean, that's gotta be hard, just to, adjust, athletically even to that much more weight then, right?
Yeah, I mean, when your body's not used to carrying that type of weight, it's of course it's going to be a learning curve. I mean, granted, I mean, I was always proud of myself on being a guy who can kind of survive and adapt. That's just the mentality of where I'm from, is being able to survive and adapt. So I found a way to get comfortable with getting that weight on. I actually, when I finally did get comfortable with being big, was um I actually blew out my knee in college first day going into my junior year.
Oh, wow.
And like when I tore my knee, I couldn't do nothing. I couldn't run. I couldn't do nothing. The stuff that I normally did. I used to play basketball for like hours a day, like on my own, like go to the rec center and play basketball with students for hours. And
Mhm.
I couldn't do that stuff for like a solid year and a half. And that's when I finally like kind of fell in love with the weight room, and just because that was the only thing I could do was all upper body stuff, and I couldn't do much legs. Legs was rehab, and that's kind of what kind of helped me make that transition to becoming a guy who was comfortable with being heavy and being strong and being able to move and do that type of stuff. So that was essentially what helped, kind of end up being a sense of blessing uh, for me to get hurt, because then it kind of changed my mindset and my work ethic in the sense of being a guy to learn how to be big and make use of it.
Absolutely. So obviously you go to Temple, and then you were there for 4 years?
Yeah, 5 years.
5? Yep. And so then how did your transition go then to the NFL? Like, were you drafted then, or what did that look like?
Now I was essentially I mean, what the early word was going in my senior year. I went into my senior year of college. I was a second rated senior guard in the country. So I
Mhm.
was a projected second round pick. Um, Going into my senior year. And I guess my draft stock, just for whatever reasons, well, I know the reasons. For a lot of reasons, my draft stock kind of fell. And I
Mhm.
ended up going undrafted, but I signed as a priority free agent with the Miami Dolphins. And then that ended up not working out. I was essentially cut on the first episode of Hard Knocks.
Oh,
Um, yeah, I was on a season 7, 2012 season 7,
okay.
episode 1, first 15 minutes. I actually posted a video of it on Twitter, I
I'm
think
gonna have to
about a
look at
week or
that now.
two
Yeah.
ago. Yeah. That was pretty much my introduction to the NFL. It
Yeah.
was pretty much cutthroat, see the business side of things. I realized that it wasn't all about just being talented and being able to
Mhm.
show your ability on the fields. There's a whole lot of stuff that, plays into being a pro athlete and the grind that it takes to really make it. So I ended up not getting drafted, but I did get a chance to, bounce around the NFL for 3 years. Spent a lot of time on practice squads. Um, the teams I spent the most time with was Chicago Bears and the Carolina Panthers, probably the two teams I was with the most. Um, and yeah, that was pretty much, I just spent 3 years grinding, trying to find a way to make a roster. Things just didn't work out for me, and just had to find other ways to make it happen.
Yeah, and obviously you talked about kind of that, process, and did now when you'd gotten cut, was it like from a specific coach, or how did that process work? Because that couldn't have been easy.
It goes. I mean, normally when what happens when it's
Mhm.
time to rosters get trimmed. You start to
Hmm.
see faces in the locker room that you don't normally see on a day-to-day basis. And when you see those
Ah,
faces, you pretty much know, okay, there's about to be some body shifted. So it kind of depends on the team, but it's normally some type of third party. Like you're not gonna get it, only the big superstars or hear from the GM, like, hey, we're letting you go type of thing, or coach type.
right,
Normally it's gonna be some, lower level assistant or intern or somebody that's, if you're a guy that doesn't really mean much, they'll basically say, hey, you know what, they need to see you upstairs, bring your playbook. You normally that's when you're told that, you already know what time it is. So
right, right,
that's pretty much how it went. My experience in Miami was different because they essentially brought me down there to cut me for the TV show. So they had already
oh wow,
known weeks before that they were going to let me go.
yeah,
Instead of calling me while I was at home and letting me go, they pretty much they pretty much
wow,
did it for the TV show. So that's kind of like when I realized, okay, it's a process to it. And then from other teams, it was always different. Carolina, when I got cut, I basically got a call from like the assistant GM, like
hmm,
in the off season, basically let me know like, hey, you know what, we're deciding to go in a different direction. We're not gonna bring you back. Appreciate your time. And then it was crazy because a month or two before that, they had just signed me to a futures deal and gave me a signing bonus and told me that they was looking forward to me coming back. Right. So things in the NFL always change. It fluctuates. Your
right,
job is never secure. It's really a day-to-day thing for anybody. I mean, the only way you kind of you're gonna get stick is if it's all dependent upon the amount of money that they dump into you. That's the only kind of security that you get in the sense of knowing if you're gonna be around for a couple years or even get a chance to be around a team or whatever the process may be. Right, you're a draft pick, you get a little bit more leash just because you're essentially their investment. You know, GMs and they're pretty much graded on how well they draft and that stuff. So you have to be successful because that's the only way they get to keep their job type of thing. So um it's really like a hierarchy. It's really a chain. Once you're in the game long enough, you understand how things work. You understand how things go. And I mean, the only thing in football they teach you is you always hear a term control the controllables, right? Only thing you control is what you do, how you approach the day, and what your performance, right? That's the only things you really can control. Everything else is pretty much out of your control. So yeah, that was pretty much my time in the NFL, man. I just bounced around. Uh was always told I was a good player, just wasn't a spot for me type of thing. So
yeah,
everything is always about, perfect timing and there's things perfect timing and great situations and all that stuff. It's really the truth, man. If you don't uh kind of strike gold in the sense of your situation, it's kind of hard to stick. I mean, essentially, I had a buddy I played with in college, same thing. Um, he got to Oakland Raiders as an undrafted free agent.
hmm,
All his starters got hurt. He got a chance to get some reps in camp, go with the ones, balled out, made the team, ended up having a 6-year career, right? So that's just
yeah.
kind of how the cookie crumbles, you know.
Who
So
was that again?
Rod Streeter.
Okay. Oh yeah, yep, yep.
Yeah. That's, played with him in college. One of my good friends. He ended up
Hmm.
having a good career. I think he's actually a scout now for the Cleveland Browns. Last I heard. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's kind of pretty much the different sides of the spectrum.
So when you were in the NFL, were there any players that kind of helped you? Because I had a chance to go to the 2019 Bears training camp, and I saw some of the offensive linemen kind of working. Obviously, Kyle Long working with some other younger linemen. Did you have any? Alignment that kind of worked with you or just kind of taught you anything, or is it just kind of like you kind of have to do your own thing?
Um, I mean, to be honest, I never really had a lineman like that in a sense. Like I had guys that I like built relationships with that I was cool
Hmm.
with.
Yeah.
But it wasn't on some like mentor, like, hey, let me show you the ropes, young fella type of thing. I mean, crazy. The crazy thing about it was I had a lot of guys who were older vets. They actually looked up to me, which was crazy.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
like I
awesome.
remember, I remember the Bears. Like I would have time. It would be days where like Matt Slauson would come up to me and be like,
Cool.
"Hey man, watching film. Like I've seen you do some things. Like how did you do that type of stuff? Like I wish I could do the things you do type of thing." And it used to always blow my mind because I'm like, man, I'm trying to be like you. I'm trying to have a 7, 8 year career vet, be able to, start and do the things you do, right? So it used to always blow my mind that guys who were so established would like watch me on film and always be like It was more like a, hey, man, I like what you're doing. Like, you're a good player. Keep pushing type of thing, as opposed to like a, hey, let me help you out. It was always like a, hey, could you show me how you did that type of thing? So it used to always blow my mind.
Right.
So that's why, like, in my mind, I kind of knew, like, I just didn't stick in the league just because I just didn't have anybody that was willing to kind of, nobody in an important spot to kind of be able to put the neck out there and say, hey, we need to keep this guy around, like he's going to be good type of thing. Um, but if I had to say, like, intensive relationships, I mean, guys like Donald Thomas, Jermon Bushrod,
Mm-hmm.
I want to say, I mean, Roberto Garza was,
Oh yeah.
I love being around Roberto. Um, Man, Kyle Long, but he was a rookie when I he was a rookie in the league. 2013, I think, was the year he was drafted.
Yeah.
So him, uh man,
You're not
another.
going to say Jay Cutler, I take it, right?
Oh, no, no, no. I mean, the only quarterbacks that I've been around that I like was cool was Tom Brady. My time in New England.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Tom Brady. It was crazy. Like, my first day in New England, he was actually the first person to walk up to me and say hello, and he already
Wow.
knew my name, which kind of blew my mind, because I'm like, how do you know who I am? Like, and he introduced himself like, hey, how you doing, Derek? My name's Tom, and I'm like, yeah, bro, I know who you are. Like, who
Right.
doesn't know who you are? But it was just like crazy to see like how humble he was, and he just didn't expect people to like know who he is, even though he probably knew people knew who he was. He just always was like super friendly, crack jokes with you, like say hello to you, come up, introduce yourself, sat in the front of all meetings, always raise his hand, ask questions, and it's like and it used to just blow my mind. I'm like, bro, like Tom Brady's doing stuff like but that's how he approached the game. He approached the game like, tomorrow's not promised. He treated, he was a low draft pick and a guy who should have, wasn't thinking anybody was going to pan out to be much. So he kind of just attacked. He always like kept that approach throughout his career, which I always admired, and it's something that, I always looked up to, because to see a guy who was so accomplished, had Super Bowls, big time contracts, married, he had the life, married to a supermodel, like all this great stuff. And he
Yeah.
was just so like cool and humble about everything. And he was super friendly, always cracking jokes, made everybody just feel welcome. Like it was no, I mean, that was essentially why that team was always so successful and,
Hmm.
had the years that they had, is just because the culture in that locker room was just amazing.
That's awesome. In any experiences with Bill Belichick then as well, or
Yeah, man, I love playing for Coach Belichick. Actually, he's like, he doesn't get the rep as a player's coach, but guys love playing for him because he's real. Like, he
yeah.
doesn't sugarcoat anything. He's always going to tell you how it is. He's not going to lie to you. He's just going to tell you like, this is the situation. This is how we're going to approach it, type of thing. Um, I remember when I got released from New England, he basically told me hey, Derek, I've been seeing you around here working hard. Like, every time I walk in the locker room, I see you staring at the playbook, learning, trying to, do your thing. And he basically told me like, man, if situation was different, I'd love to have you around here, but we paid certain guys to be here, and that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles. And but hopefully things work out for you, type of thing, right? And I had to, you have no reason but to respect it, right? Because you just kind of knew, it is what it is, But yeah, like, he was super cool. He made like being in the locker room super fun. Um,
That's interesting.
Everything,
You
yeah.
totally don't get that. Like the media has this picture of him, so that's cool to hear.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how he is with the media. He's just real
Yeah.
stoic. Like, he's not gonna um he treats that as like a part of his job. It's not like hey, this is an area to show my personality. It's more like hey, this is what I have to do. I'm gonna give you guys what you need, and I'm gonna go about my day, type of thing. And that's just essentially kind of the gist of how that team was run, right? Everything was about, when
Hmm.
you walk in the building, take care of what you need to take care of, do what you got to do, go home, enjoy yourself, type of thing, right? Even when we was working hard and he was doing the things we needed to do, there were times where he'd be like, hey, guys, today, no practice. We're going to, do a team function. We're going to go next door to in New England, they had how the stadium was set up. It was like a plaza with restaurants and movie theaters and all that type of stuff in the area. Be like, hey, we're gonna go over to the movie theater, watch a movie as a team today. Like, it was just real. It was just a real fun environment to be in. There's a lot of real team activities, and that was part of the process of just building camaraderie and guys being able to enjoy being around each other and enjoy playing with each other. And you saw it on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And so talk about, obviously you went from the Bears and you spent some time with the Panthers as well. Talk about that and then, your transition kind of away from the NFL.
Yeah, so after the Bears, after I was there at the end of Lovey's tenure, and then
Mhm.
I was there at the start of Mark Trestman's tenure, and then
Oh, that'd
right,
be interesting.
yeah, it was night and day actually.
Ugh.
Lovey was I love playing for Lovey. Like
Mhm.
that was probably the most fun locker room I've ever been in my life with like B. Urlacher and Lance Briggs and Peanut and
Hester,
um
Devin, right?
Hester, yeah, D Hest. You had Forte, you had Julius Peppers. It was just a tons of dudes, man. But it was just a lot of super cool vets.
Mhm.
A lot of guys who just made be coming to work every day like super fun, man. And it was unfortunate how that season unfolded because I think that was the year they went on like a 10-game win streak, and then we lost like the last like 6 or 7 games of the year, ended up missing the playoffs. I think we finished like 10-6. That was the year like us, the Vikings, and I think the Packers. We all finished 10-6, and because we lost that last game to the Vikings, they ended up making the playoffs and we didn't, and then they ended up firing Lovey, which like kind of broke my heart, man. Because
Yeah.
I felt like if Lovey was still a coach, I probably would end up being stuck around and playing on that team. So
Right.
um, when Trestman came in, actually, I actually like playing for Trestman too and playing for Aaron Cromer. Aaron Cromer was like one of my favorite offensive line coaches I played for.
Really?
Yeah, man, I love playing for Coach Cromer, and he had a great pedigree. At the time, when he came from New Orleans, he was coaching, Jyree Evans and
Mhm.
all those guys like that. And then Bushrod came up there. He was, with Cromer, so he kind of knew the mojo. But yeah, I had a fun time playing for Coach Cromer and Trestman. They actually were big fans of me. The only reason why I didn't stick around on that team was just because the GM at the time, um, what's his name? Phil Emery.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Emery just he put a lot of money into had a lot of vets come into that room, and then he drafted Kyle and he drafted
Mhm.
um my man Jordan Mills. So with the draft picks and then having all those vets again was a situation where it just wasn't any room for me. I thought I stuck around P Squad maybe for like a week or two, but that was just because it was another vet that they did one of those things where they had to cut him for the first week of the season, so his contract wasn't guaranteed because of injury. So they
Mhm.
brought me back, put me on P Squad, and then once that transpired, let me go, brought him back. I think what happened was I think what Coach Cromer and them told me is the reason why um, they didn't keep me around on practice squad that year was because Phil Emery wanted to keep a tackle on practice squad instead of an interior guy.
Interesting.
So they signed some other guy for some other team, had him on P squad, and ended up letting me go, even though Coach Trestman and Coach Cromer wanted to keep me. So that was again just the politics of everything and how it played out. Um, so I ended up getting released from the Bears, went home, um, was chilling at home. Actually, the crazy thing was when they cut me, I had just drove to Chicago with my car, and
Oh,
then the
wow.
next day they cut me, so I had to turn around and drive back home to New York. And on my
Wow.
way driving to New York, I actually had to stop in Cleveland to fly to Charlotte because I had to work out for the Panthers. So I had to leave my car,
Wow.
Cleveland Airport, fly to Carolina, work out for them. They decided not to sign me at that moment. I had to fly back from Charlotte to Cleveland, pick up my car, finish driving back to New York.
Wow.
And I was home in the off season just working out. I'm home for the season working out. And then Carolina signed me to a futures deal in December. And then that's how I ended up going to the Panthers. And then yeah, went through training camp with them, ended up sticking on the practice squad with them for a year. Uh, and then which was a fun I think that was 2014, so that was the year before they went to the Super Bowl. So that was it was a fun year. It was a great
Mhm.
team. I knew they were destined to do well.
Yeah.
Pretty much figured they would have a good team because there's a lot of good players on that team. Ended up not being able to stick around longer, and then from there, just kind of made other pit stops.
Yeah, in one thing I had a question about, when you say futures deal in from a player's perspective, what do you hear when you futures deal?
So a futures deal essentially is a contract that they give to guys who are not joining the roster currently, but will join the roster once the new. Well, in the NFL, they have a like a new year sense in a sense. So like the start of the new league year is when that futures deal essentially gets added to the books, right? So
Yeah.
when you see all these transactions where you say, oh, okay, so and so signed a futures deal, essentially saying we signed the guy today, but he doesn't officially join the roster until the new league year starts.
And if as a player, if you sign that and maybe a better opportunity comes along, can you just kind of get out of that deal, or how does that?
Nah,
That's a
nah. NFL contracts are pretty much binding. Same thing with CFL.
yeah, yeah.
Once you sign one of those deals, you're pretty much in it until you get released from it. So, if you were to sign a futures deal with an NFL team, and then another team was to come calling and say, "Hey, you know, we want to sign you today to come play," or whatever. I think the futures deal pretty much is pretty much the case. I think the only guys that could sign towards the latter year is guys who were on current rosters before and were released type of thing.
Mhm.
So if they're not signing you to the practice squad, then normally you'll get signed to a futures deal. So um just at the time it was I think they were in the playoffs when I signed.
Mhm.
So it wasn't no adding anybody to the practice squad or anything at that time. Pretty much whatever whoever's there is there, right? So
Mhm.
um that's why the futures deal is pretty much the only thing you can sign in that time frame for, especially for guys who are bottom roster or not currently in the league or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. And so you talked about kind of other opportunities then. How did you kind of, transition then from the Panthers to your next stop?
So after I got let go from Carolina, it was in the off season, going into that 2015 season. So they released me in March. I think it was like a week before we were supposed to start
Oh, wow.
OTAs. So when they released me, I ended up going out to play arena in Phoenix, Arizona, with the Arizona Rattlers.
Mhm.
Um, and then I spent the remaining of that arena season, that 2015 arena season, in Phoenix. When the arena season ended, I think we lost in the playoffs. Um, the game before the Arena Bowl, we lost to the San Jose Sabercats. I ended up coming back to New York. Was kind of in limbo, didn't know what was going on. Knew I didn't want to go back and play arena again. It was kind of much in my mind, like, okay, is this it? Is my football career over? What's the next move? And then 2 weeks later, I got a call to join the practice squad of the Calgary Stampeders in the CFL. And I had to go through like a process to like get my passport expedited because I didn't have a passport. Um, well, luckily I did have a passport that I didn't know about. My college had actually got one from me
Oh,
because we were
nice.
supposed to play in a bowl game in Toronto. We thought we were at some point. So they got everybody passports as like a futures thing. So I basically called up like secretary lady in my college football ops. Was like, hey, Miss Nadia, do you guys have a passport have a passport for me? And she was like, yeah, we've been holding on to them because we paid for them. We've had them for a while. Guys didn't know nothing about them. So
Wow.
yeah, I basically had to give her like $100, and then she gave me my passport, and I was able to come up to Canada, my first time ever coming to Canada, and sign for the Calgary Stampeders. Was on their practice squad for a week, and then was starting the very next week, and then the rest is history from there.
Yeah. And so, I mean, obviously that wasn't a question. You definitely were going to go, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, was it a tough transition then, just the difference of the game, or I mean, was it just kind of like football's football?
All right. I don't want to sound arrogant, but for me,
Yeah,
no, there was no transition.
yeah,
It was
that's good.
I pretty much hit the ground running.
Mhm.
Um, but that's just because the way I approached it, it was just football is football. I didn't really
Mhm.
care too much about the nuances or the different differences, even though they were something. I just approached it as like, for me, this was pretty much my last shot at having a football career. So I didn't want to go in there worrying about, oh, I'm not gonna be able to do this, I can't do that. I just pretty much put it on myself to figure it out, and
Mhm.
I ended up figuring it out. But I know tons of guys who especially are used to playing the American game who come up to the CFL and they struggle because they just can't get around wrapping their minds around how to maneuver with the nuances of playing on a bigger field and for DBs, receivers having that running start. for offensive line of us was having that yard off the ball. So having D lineman a yard back was an adjustment for me because I was so used to having guys right in front of me and kind of the action being immediate, quick, sudden, to now having to learn to be patient and kind of let things kind of play out a lot longer than I was accustomed or trained to do. So that I know normally for offensive line, it's probably the biggest nuances that learning how to play with that yard off the ball and learning how to play in space and with patience. Because as an offensive lineman, that's the worst thing you want to do is give a guy space and pretty much have a guy put you in a sense where he always has a two-way go, right? So that's the
Mhm.
tricky part of playing offensive line is that D linemen always have a two-way go, and you got to be able to have the patience and the feet to be able to kind of keep up with people. So the athletes in the CFL as opposed to NFL, they're a lot faster,
Right.
a lot quicker, just because those guys are smaller, right? So normally, what would be a linebacker in NFL, those guys are now defensive ends in the CFL, right? So now you got guys who are a lot faster, a lot quicker, size wise, not as big. D linemen in the NFL way bigger than D linemen in the CFL. D tackles in the CFL are about 260, on a high side. 260, 270 would be a big guy, right? In NFL, you got D tackles who are 315, 320, 310, right? You got defensive ends who are 270, as opposed to defensive ends who are in the CFL who are like 235, 225, 240, right? So the athletes are much smaller, but they're quicker. And a lot more space to play with. So that's the big transition. But for me personally, I didn't struggle with it.
Did it change your did your, like, footing change at all? Like, anything with that, or are you just
No,
kinda
no. I mean, like I said, for me, it wasn't
yeah,
bad because I was always a big guy with quick feet and
yeah.
being able to be mobile, right? So CFL game actually kind of fit what I already was, so it was an easy transition for me. Now, if you got guys who are pretty much been heavy footed their whole life or used to being heavy footed, like I know for a fact there's a lot of guys who may be great in the NFL. If you put them in the CFL game, they would look horrible. They wouldn't be able to do it. They struggle. It'll be a whole different, night and day type of thing, right? And that's normally really what it is for a lot of guys is
Mhm.
you can be good in one game, but you can go to the next one and not be so good just because those small nuances, they make a big difference for a lot of people. So
And you said you played under, Mark Trestman. Did he talk a little bit about, the CFL then, that you remember, or
I didn't talk to Coach Tressman personally about his time in
okay.
the CFL. I mean, I knew about it, I heard about it. I had a lot of friends who played in the CFL, guys I played with in college. So CFL wasn't like unknown, but it's kind of like that thing you don't talk about, like, right? No one's don't like guys are not in NFL, they're not in the locker room talking about like, hey, did you see the CFL game? Like it's crazy type of thing, right? Only reason guys would know about it is just because they may have buddies or friends who play in it and they go, oh yeah, I know a buddy who plays up there, type of thing.
Mhm.
And you would always get the question from guys like, oh, what's it like? Like, or you would ask guys. So I remember our assistant offensive line coach was on Tressman's staff when he was in Montreal winning those Grey Cups and stuff. So
Mhm.
I remember asking him. I think now he's actually the offensive line coach for the Carolina Panthers.
Okay.
But I remember asking him about it, like, hey, is there, what's the difference between like, football up there and football here? What's it like being a lineman up there, type of thing. And I wasn't asking him just because like I thought like, oh, hey, I would end up in the CFL one day. It was just kind of just me being curious and
Mhm.
just wanting to know more about background and different places. And I remember saying, hey, I got a buddy who plays up there, so I would just ask him, like, I would always talk to my friend, my best friend who played in the CFL. He's actually the reason why I ended up going to the CFL, because he was always like in my ear, like, yo, if things don't work out in the league, like, you should go up there, like, you'll be great, you'll pretty much kill it up there, type of thing. So I always had like he would always tell me that, like, yo, if you ever come up here, like, you're gonna kill it, type of thing. And I would always be like, oh yeah, that, like, only way I'm going up there is if I absolutely have no other choice, which is what it came down to. So,
Right, right.
but he was right though. He basically, he was always the one telling me from day one, like, hey, you're gonna be that guy up there once you go up there. And then, things kind of ended up working out that way for me.
Absolutely, yeah. So I just have a list of some of your, obviously CFL's most outstanding lineman, offensive lineman in 2016. You've been an all-star. You won a Grey Cup as well.
Yeah, 2018.
Yeah, so, with those accolades then, I mean, kind of how do the contracts work up there? I mean, do you get kind of like bonuses, things like that? I mean, obviously, you really kinda, made a amazing career so far there. How does that work up, in the CFL?
Yeah, so CFL contracts are unique in the sense of your performance is essentially kind of built into a lot of the money you make. Same thing in the NFL, but performance bonuses are kind of like they're kind of like the cherry on top, right?
Mhm.
Normally, the biggest thing in NFL contracts is that base salary and guaranteed money. So the thing with CFL contracts is we don't get guaranteed money. So our guarantees come from signing bonuses and from yeah, pretty much signing bonuses. That was pretty much a guaranteed money. So if you got a signing bonus, that was pretty much their way of letting you know, like, all right, we're invested in you, you'll be around type of thing. Um, Same thing in NFL. Signing bonuses and guaranteed money in the contract is essentially what is the telltale of how long you would be there, or if you would if you don't perform, they'll kind of dump your contract and take the salary cap hit, right? So that's the nuances of NFL contracts that make them intricate. Is that you have like salary cap penalties and that type of stuff when you
Mhm.
start dumping contracts and trying to change bodies. In CFL, you don't have that, right? So it's pretty much whenever they don't want you, they could get rid of you, and that's pretty much it. So,
Right.
um, yeah, with getting those accolades and stuff, that's pretty
Yeah.
much in your contract is bonus money. It's not big bonus money. So a lot of guys don't really care too much for hitting them because it's not like it's gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna get $50,000 if I'm an all-star this year type of thing, like you would in the NFL. Like, you know how some guys got in their contract, if you make a Pro Bowl, you get 150K extra, right? No, like for us, it's like $1,000 or $2,000 or three
Right.
thousand dollars. Like it's not nothing dramatic. So um but for me, it was more of the accolades mean more in the sense of establishing a career for you. So
Mhm.
the more accolades you get, the more respect you get, the more you're inclined to get more opportunities to be able to keep playing the game that you love and being paid for it, right? So that was a sense my motivation behind wanting to be one of the best guys up here was I just wanted to continue my football career and keep it going and honestly, for most guys, it's being a Hall of Famer, right? Being able to get a bronze bust and being able to be immortalized as one of the greatest to play the game, right? So that was always my driving motivation. It still is to this day. On why I still play the game. So yeah, that was pretty much it, man. I just came up with a mindset of it's do or die. I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna show people, what I can do. And I finally got the opportunity to get on the field and show people the player that I always knew that I was, and it worked out okay.
Absolutely, and I'm not sure if you got a chance to watch the NFL Pro Bowl today, but
Yeah, I did.
obviously it's a different kind of All Star game with the CFL All Star game. I mean, is it similar to the NFL one where there maybe kind of people don't want to get hurt, or I mean, are people going all out at the CFL All
Oh, we
Star
don't
game?
have one actually.
Oh, you don't?
They
Oh, it's
used
just
to. They
okay,
used
yeah,
to have one back in the day. There
yeah.
hasn't been an All-Star game in the CFL for I think close to like 2 decades now. So
Wow, I did not know that.
yeah, so All-Star is kind of more of a end of the season consolation prize type of thing. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
pretty much being recognized for being one of the better players in the league for that year. So that's what all stars pretty much mean for us. There's no like game or like all-star weekend or no Pro Bowl weekend. Like we don't get that type of stuff. It's just more of an acknowledgement of saying, hey, you were the best of the best this year, and we're gonna acknowledge you for it type of thing. So
As a football player, that's probably better as well. I mean, you don't want to get injured. You don't want to, risk, the next year either, right?
this is catch 22, I guess you could say, because
Yeah.
those guys in the Pro Bowl get paid for that. Like
Right.
it's not a free weekend. It's actually more money in their pocket, right? Because some of them
Right.
may have it in their contract. Like I said, if I make a Pro Bowl, I get an extra 100,000, 150,000. You actually get paid for winning or losing it. So I think the winning team gets like 70 grand or no, I think the winning team gets like 80 grand and the losing team gets like 40 or 50, something like that. So you get paid for that. If you get like Pro Bowl MVP or something like that, you get that car and you get a bonus check for that too. So a lot of that stuff, even though it's fun for them, it's
Mhm.
still another way to just put more money in your pocket, right? It's bonus money, that type of thing. So for us, it's bonus money, but like I said, it's not big, right? A lot of those guys get thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars for playing, being an all star or being a first team all NFL or that type of stuff, right? So essentially,
Yeah.
that's what it is for us. Our all star acknowledgement is what the NFL has for like first team all
All
pro type
pro.
of thing.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so that's the equivalent.
In with being a Grey Cup champion, I mean, what was there? I mean, what was that process? I mean, process like, obviously, did he get a chance to, I mean, was there a bonus for that and everything too, or?
Yeah, yeah. So you do get bonuses for winning the championship. So that's pretty much why guys fight to be Grey Cup champ because
Mhm.
for us it's an extra um what is it? It's I think the winning team gets 16,000 and the losing team gets 8,000. So
Okay.
if you win the Grey Cup, it's pretty much an extra 10 grand, 12 grand in your pocket, depending upon, where you play in province and taxes and all that stuff. So extra 10 grand that you get additional. You get additional checks for playoffs too. Same thing. It's the same thing in the NFL.
Mhm.
You win playoff games, you get bonus checks. You win the Super Bowl, you get a bonus check. So that's just pretty much the same equivalent for us. So you do get paid. Again, it's not the same. NFL, you win Super Bowl, you get 150,000 for winning the Super Bowl, right? We get 16. So and again too, we get paid in a foreign currency too. That's another thing you got to take into account. We get paid in Canadian dollars, not US dollars. So if you're a US guy, you got to get your money converted when you come back home.
Yeah, and so obviously, that's been kind of experience. Do you have like a apartment then in Canada then, or how does that work?
So housing is actually built into your contract. So you get a housing stipend essentially in your CFL contract, which is money that's given to you to pay for your housing expenses, whatever the case may be. Most of the time, guys are going to rent or Airbnbs or get an apartment that's up for rent or that type of stuff, right? So most guys are going to have a roommate. Not a lot of guys are living on their own. Unless you have a family and you got in your contract that you have enough money to get your own apartment type of thing. Um, I think now for us, I think they actually, based over the pandemic, they actually capped housing now, so it's not as much as it used to be before the
Mhm.
pandemic started. But yeah, that's pretty much built into your contract. It's kind of like other secondary leagues. Like when I played arena, housing was pretty much paid for by the team. Um, Same thing with like the XFL and from what I hear with the USFL, that type of thing. Pretty much housing is taken care of by the team. It's not something that's on you. In the CFL, housing is in your contract. So you get a housing stipend. You got to find your own spot, but you get a housing stipend to make sure you pay for it so it doesn't fully come out of your pocket in a sense. And then in the NFL, you make enough money to where you can buy whatever you want when you want it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, you're, going to be starting, the season pretty soon, or when does the season start this year?
Normally training camps kick off in May. I think our first preseason game is May 28th. So I'm sure sometime I think training camps will probably open that second to third week of May, which it normally does. It's normally like mid to early May. Um, I think it was rumblings that things may be pushed up a little bit just because of timing and CBA stuff. We actually do for new CBA this year too, so who knows how that's going to go. If there's no CBA by the time training camp rolls around, then things will start a little later than normal. So that's something else. But I mean, I don't, I don't anticipate it going past CBA not getting done before training camp. But again, these are things that it's kind of out of players' control. You don't never know. It's on our players union and the league to figure something out. So hopefully it's something that makes sense for both sides. But yeah, normally training camps kick off in May. You'll get your first preseason game end of May. Uh, Second preseason game. We only play two preseason games in Canada as opposed to like the NFL who used to have
Right.
four. Now they got three.
Right.
But now that NFL plays 17 games, we play 18.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we have a 20, I think now it's a 22-week season we get 3 bye weeks as opposed to 2. We get 3 bye weeks, and we play 18 regular season games. But the crazy thing is we only have 9 teams, so you end up playing teams 2 and 3 times throughout the year,
So
sometimes 4.
I mean, is that obviously you get to know, your opponents pretty well and everything?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, guys know guys. I mean,
Yeah.
the only thing is, the I guess the competitive element is when you play the same people numerous amounts of times. Um, gives them opportunity to be able to switch things up and do it a little differently, right? As opposed to NFL where you may only see a guy once or twice a year, so pretty much that one game is whatever it is you're going to get. With us, it's like hey, I could play a guy 1 week and I could dominate him, but he gets an opportunity to have 2 more times to come back and kind of, compensate for that performance type of thing. So, I think like in 2019, we played Winnipeg like 4 or 5 times because we played them like 3 times, so 3 or 4 times in the regular season, and we played them again in the playoffs type of thing. So, you get an opportunity to really know guys and know your opponent and know guys that you're playing against, pretty well.
Yeah, so you talked about Winnipeg, and they're the favorites. Do you, when you play them, is it something like you just kind of I don't know, get up to play them a little bit more, knowing that they're kind of at the top there? Is it just kind of like every week you kind of know that you have to give 110%?
I mean, right now, yeah, they're the top dogs. When I sat out last year, so I didn't play. And then in 2019, they when they won it, they were more of they weren't like a top seed. Uh, so I wouldn't say it's like okay, those are the big dogs, we got to get up to beat them. I mean, now they have the crown because they got back to back Grey Cups, right? So
Hmm.
of course teams are going to be kind of put a a little more onus behind playing them now. um, but when I was, my early years in the league, it was actually Calgary who was the team that people used to have to raise the game to play because Calgary's pretty much been the model of consistency in the sense of repeatedly being in contention for Grey Cups, and that's pretty much what um, Calgary's been known for. I always
Hmm.
call them the New England Patriots of the North because essentially the organization where if you don't prepare for them, it's always going to be a dogfight, and they're always going to be in a conversation, regardless of what bodies or who's there, type of thing, right? So, in my mind, Winnipeg is just another team, but
Yeah.
I mean they earn the respect to be treated as champions, man. That's the beautiful thing is when you win championships, you get treated as such. So, I'm sure guys will be um, wanting to up the game to play them. But there's a ton of talent in the CFL that we just don't get enough credit for. A lot of guys who could be in the NFL could be productive members um, in the league. It's just more of a just getting into the game and understanding names and faces and pretty much just understanding what's in front of you.
Who are some of the top players, that people should know in the CFL, or and maybe some of the ones that you look forward to facing, even though they're maybe tough to face?
Um, I mean now rosters are a little different. I'm kind of the old man now in a sense.
Yeah.
So I would say, in the sense of like defensive linemen,
Hmm.
you got the Sean Lemons, the Willie Jeffersons, Jackson Jeffcoat. You have uh, who else? The AC Leonards, the Jonathan Woodard. I guess he was a rookie last year, but he's a
Hmm.
guy who was a former NFL draft pick. He had a big year as a rookie. I think he had double digit sacks in his first year in the league.
Wow.
So yeah, he's definitely a guy that you got to respect. I guess Shane Ray's up there.
Mm.
Um, you got Sean Oakman. You have I'm trying to think who else on the defensive line. Jagarrett Davis.
Mhm.
Um, uh, who else? Dylan Wynn. Micah Johnson. I mean, a ton of guys who are really good, and a lot of those guys do have some type of big time college, big time NFL pedigrees behind them. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much it from a defensive line standpoint. And then you also have quarterbacks. up there guys. I think Edmonton just signed JT Barrett. So
Mhm.
you got guys like that. You have our running back in Calgary, Kadeem Carey, who was a former Chicago Bear draft pick, um, who's a great player. You got who else? I think DeAnthony Thomas just signed in BC.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
Former Oregon Duck, I believe, yep, and
yeah,
Chief, and yep.
yeah. You got Lucky Whitehead, who used to be former return man for the Cowboys. I mean, you got there's a ton of guys, a lot of guys with
Yeah,
NFL
yeah.
pedigree, right? So the sad part is, especially CFL doesn't get looked at much in the Americas because a lot of people always they just think like, oh, if these guys are in the NFL, then they're probably not playing football no more. But they don't realize there's a lot of guys that you probably enjoyed watching in college, or a lot of guys who may have been like preseason all stars
Mhm.
for your NFL team who just didn't stick, and they're being they're all stars up in Canada, right? So what I always tell people down here is that the CFL game is full of great athletes. You just got to get eyes on the product, right? And be able to kind of accentuate those guys and accentuate their stories.
Absolutely. And how does the one question I want to ask, how does the Grey Cup work? So is it going to be in your home stadium then this year?
Yeah. So no, not ours, but pretty
Oh,
much there's a Grey Cup committee every year.
yeah.
They pick whatever stadium is going to host it. It's normally in the bigger, popular CFL cities. But I think every city normally at some point gets a chance to host it. The good thing is most of the cities in the CFL are the major cities in Canada.
Mhm.
So the two Grey Cups that I played in was one year. The first year was in Toronto, and then second year was in Edmonton. The last Grey Cup was in Hamilton, which is right outside of Toronto, about 35 minutes outside of Toronto. So, you got Montreal, which is a great city. You got Vancouver, which is where the BC Lions are. They're in Vancouver. Calgary is a big hub city. So you got us. Edmonton's a big hub city. Um, so there's always a lot. Edmonton gets a lot of concerts and a lot of musical acts, do a lot of tours and stuff through Edmonton. You got the NHL teams in Calgary and
Mhm.
Edmonton and Vancouver and Toronto and Montreal. So I mean, it's a nice sporting footprint.
Mhm.
Regina is probably actually Saskatchewan. Regina is probably the biggest, in a sense, of CFL cities. They're like they're like what the Dallas Cowboys are to America, what the Saskatchewan
Okay.
Roughriders are, right? So that's the equivalent in that sense. So what the Cowboys, they could stink and they cannot be good, but they got fans everywhere. It's America's team, right? I would essentially say the Saskatchewan Roughriders are Canada's team, right? That's the team that has the biggest fan base because they don't have any other pro sports in that province outside of the Rough Riders. So pretty much everybody in Saskatchewan supports them. Second closest would probably be Winnipeg in that sense. Winnipeg has that same type of culture, but in a sense of Saskatchewan Rough Rider fans, I mean, I don't think people pay attention to it, but if you ever watch any major sporting event in America, you will
Mhm.
always see one Rough Rider jersey in the crowd.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to
You
look now.
Yeah, you're always going to see somebody with a Rough Rider jersey, a Rough Rider hat. It could be a person that's from Canada that knows about it normally, but they're they're pretty much the Dallas Cowboys of Canada. So you'll see their jerseys everywhere. They cannot be playing. You'll see their stuff somewhere in the stands in the stadium, something like that. So um
And
Regina's definitely going to be. That's going to be it's going to be cold, but it's going to be a fun Grey Cup.
I was saying, and you play for the Calgary Stampeders now, but you had played for Saskatchewan, and
Yeah,
I mean, are the fans, what are the fans like? Having been a former,
player. Yeah.
Rough Rider. I mean, do they give you a hard time, or how does
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Like
Yeah,
I said,
yeah,
it's just like Cowboys fans.
yeah, yeah.
It's the same way.
Oh yeah,
They love their players and
oh
they
yeah,
and they and they despise everybody else. And if you are a former player that played there but you didn't do good, then they're always going to remind you of some that type of thing, right?
yeah.
But it's a very passionate fan base. They love their team, they love their province, they love their communities. So they're heavy. It's kind of almost so equated, I guess it would be like how it is in Europe with soccer teams. Like
Oh
how, it's really intense. It's almost like a sense of blood right and pride, like this, like, I bleed, whatever colors, whatever the case may be. Like, you see those, you see those crazy movies like what's the one soccer movie, something hooligans,
Oh, right.
something like
Yes.
that.
Yep.
Yeah. So like it's kind of like that, right? So um yeah, when you play for that team, it's essentially, if you're part of the team, they love you. If you're part of the team and you're not doing well, they're gonna let you know. Um, and if you're a former player and went somewhere else, you gotta mix of people who still cheer you on, and you gotta mix of people who are like, yeah, he's terrible. I don't care where he is. He's terrible, type of thing, right? So, it's a passionate fan base. I love my time there. I always tell people
Mhm.
I don't have any qualms about anybody or anything that ever transpired. It's it's one of the benchmark CFL franchises, and it always will be.
And what are you looking forward to most about this season then? Just kind of, actually getting to play this year since like last year you sat out then or
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to getting back onto the field. It's just sitting out and watching it from afar, and um, going through my own situation that I went through with the team that I had, decided to sign with before the season started. I'm just excited to be able to get back up there and get back to, back to doing what I do best, and that's bone crushing.
awesome. Yeah, and I did have a question then too. So you have your own kind of like skills training and
Yeah,
talk a little bit about that.
yeah. So I've always had guys reach out to me, or like, even like I said, former players that I play with, and always ask me, like, how I do certain things, or
Mhm.
just ask for tidbits on how to get better, right? And it just kind of finally dawned on me this off season, like, why don't I just start my own skills and drills company, and just kind of teach the things that I
Smart.
know that made me a good player.
Mhm.
So right now, I'm working with a young kid who's pretty much going to kind of be like an undrafted gem, but I'm working on
Mhm.
getting his game better, and improving him. And um it's a good thing when you work with people who don't know you, but they see the things that you do, and they see how it translates. And that's the one thing I always, I'm a firm believer in, right? I'm not going to train you on looking cute, or I'm not going to do these cute drills that makes it look like it's preparing you. I'm going to actually teach you stuff that's going to be translatable to the game and make you a better
Mhm.
football player. And I think that's something that's lacking, especially in offensive line training. It's a kind of a um underdeveloped market, because there's tons of offensive linemen, right? But there's like only like maybe two quote unquote offensive line gurus, and most of them only work with, like, big pro athletes, type of thing, right?
Right.
So I'm essentially trying to be the guy who can work with the unheralded, the non talked about guys, and teach them little tricks that I learned to help take their games to different levels, right? So what I always tell guys that I work with is, if you're average, I'm gonna make you good. If you're good, I'm gonna make you great. If you're great, I'm gonna make you dominant. And that's essentially, that's what how I kind of approach, the things that I do, right? Everything that I do is meant to help elevate my game in any aspect, any situation, right? And prepare myself, not just for what's in front of me, but what's to come, right? And that's essentially what my company is pretty much based around.
That's awesome. Like I said, any day I get a chance to talk about football is a good day, and especially when someone is doing it, I love hearing those the inner kind of workings of because as a football fan I can sit back and see certain things and enjoy my team and everything, but when I get a chance to just hear you know behind the curtain like how things are done, I think it helps me understand a little bit better too. Like I'm a Bears fan, but I'm a realistic fan. I'm not like one of those one, oh, your team stinks, this and that. Like,
Right,
I think it's important to, just, it, like if there's a player that leaves the Bears, I'm not going to hate him, right? You
right,
can't do that. I mean,
right.
it is a business, and as a Bears fan, like Allen Robinson will probably leave this year. I
Yeah,
wish him all the luck. I mean, he's been great for the Bears. Um, Coaching wasn't all that good this year, so but I think he's going to be great. Where you got to wish him the best.
right, right, right. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what fans should be, right?
Hmm.
I'm a guy who's very active on social media, so
Awesome.
I'm very, I consider myself the people's champ, right? I want
Yeah,
people to have access to me. I want fans to feel like they're comfortable talking to me in any way, shape, or form, asking me a question, whether it's good or bad, right? So
absolutely.
I don't shy away from it. especially in this age of social media, a lot of
Mhm.
guys will shy away from contact with fans because they're just scared of like, they don't want I don't want to say the wrong thing, or
Right.
maybe they're scared of. I'm supremely confident in how to articulate myself and how to
Yep.
relay a message. So I don't never really fear what I can do or say, because media is like kind of like my real passion outside of sports.
Yeah.
So I embrace the aspect of using social media to make myself accessible and reachable to everybody, so that you can ask me these type of questions, or you can have a chat with me and kind of get the interfactions to how things work, right? I think that's something that's needed in the sporting world, right?
Mhm.
Because again, as athletes, we always want to build ourselves up as larger than life,
Mhm.
entities. When in actuality, people are people, right?
Yep.
Doesn't change. Doesn't
Exactly.
matter how much money you have. Doesn't matter. There's no difference between me and Jeff Bezos outside of our bank account. So,
Right, right, right.
so that's how I approach things, right? So, my thing is just in the sense of, fans need to, enjoy themselves, and there's a sense of we as we're entertainers, right? I tell guys all the time, it's not just about playing a game of football, but you're also an entertainer, right? The reason
Mhm.
why people spend the money that they spend on sports and athletics is because they want to be entertained. They want to be able to
Mhm.
enjoy it. They want to be able to see some exciting things. They want to feel like they just experienced something that they know they can't experience in their everyday, day-to-day life, right? So why not be someone who can give that to them? So in all
Absolutely.
aspects. So
Yeah, it's so interesting. We saw the the Pro Bowl, and there were some fans were like, "Oh, how come Patrick Mahomes and
yeah,
the Chiefs players? How come they're smiling at the Pro Bowl?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay, well,
it's fun. It's entertainment.
right, yeah, of course. I'm sure as an athlete, you have your process of like, when you lose. I mean, it can't be easy, to
Right.
go ahead and you talk about media. I think that's something we take for granted as fans is okay. You just had I don't know, worst game of your life, or even you lose something you really wanted to get, and then you have to face the media. I just can't imagine what that's like. you know and so I'm sure you have your process of and then letting it go, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially end of the day, we get paid money to play a
Hmm.
child's game, right?
Yeah,
Again, it's entertainment, right? With any
absolutely.
sport, I never understood why people get mad at someone because they're not physically showing that they're upset, right? Because you'll
Right.
get different narratives, right? Think about how people talked about Odell when he was upset losing games and going crazy on the sidelines, and then you got people saying, "Oh, he's immature. He doesn't know how to handle himself. Does this right?" But then you got the same people who Patrick Mahomes loses a game instead of going to the Super Bowl, which everybody expects him to be in, and they see him the next week and he's smiling. Now they're mad. Like, why is he not upset? Why is he
Yep.
not? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's different things, right? When Tom Brady does it, it's passion. When somebody else does it, it's considered immatureness, right? So it's all in the sense of the narrative and who they want to put it on, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
I think as athletes, we all have our process. We all handle things differently. I'm a guy who's pretty much I never get too high, I never get too low, right? I'm a guy who after a game, if I play bad, I don't have a problem saying, you know what, I stunk it up. I got to be better. And if I did good, I don't have no problem telling you, hey, I was amazing tonight, and you need to go watch that again, type of thing. So
Yeah.
that's essentially that's how you got to be in this industry, man. There's no that's the human factor of
Hmm.
the game that I think people just for some reason they just forget that athletes are human. Athletes are people, right? When you go to work and you have a bad day and you come home, you're not gonna, if you had a bad day, you're gonna be upset, right? There's some people who go to work and have a bad day, and when they clock out, they go, "Okay, this day's done.
Yep.
Tomorrow's a new day," right?
Yeah.
It's just the human element. Some people are different; they handle things differently. I'm the same way. I never
Yeah.
get too up. I never get too down. It is what it is. I do what I got to do to perform as best I can. If things don't go that way, then at the end of the day, as long as I know I gave it my all, I mean, I can look myself in the mirror and know I gave it everything I had, and I could go to sleep at night. That's really what it boils down to at the end of the day. So, um,
I tell you, yeah, I mean that's good life advice. I mean, because really, I mean, you can only, I mean, you talked about early on, you can only control the controllables, and that's, you can't control, what someone else is going to say about you. You can only control about like your production and your effort, really.
Absolutely, that's it. I mean, I'm in the 9 to 5 world now. Especially that's the uniqueness about being a CFL athlete is that we pretty much get a chance to play both sides of the fence on depending on the time of year. So, in my current role in the industry I'm in, it's performance based as well, but it's in that 9 to 5 realm, right? And I
Yeah.
know that if I'm not coming into work every day and trying to find ways to be the best version of myself to make sure I'm productive and doing what is asked of me, then I understand, there's a possibility I could get fired, or there's a possibility that my boss is going to come to me and say, hey, you're not doing this, or there's going to be other people in the job who doesn't like the way I do things and talk about me, right? That's just
Yeah.
the real world we live in. So
Yeah.
um as athletes, we deal with it on a I wouldn't say a higher scale, but a different scale, right? So it's,
Yeah.
it's a little different, especially when you got the public more in tuned into um, your performance and how you do your job, right? It's a little different aspect that comes with it, right? When in the 9 to 5 world, only people who know what's going on to choose the people at your job.
Yep.
In the
Yeah.
sports world, everyone knows what's going on with you is, Tom, Dick, and Harry. Everybody knows. So,
Everybody has an opinion too. Yeah.
and everybody has an opinion, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's essentially what comes with that's what comes with it. So, as an athlete, you just got to know how to handle it. You got to know how to be above the nonsense. And you got prime examples of it. Some guys handle it well, some guys don't. That's just human nature, right?
Hmm.
It's very easy. What I always tell fans, it's very easy to sit at home and say, "Oh, if it was me, I would have done this," right? But in actuality, until you get into it, you don't know what you're going to do. It's
Nope.
easy to sit. Coaches say that all the time. I've had coaches who can sit back and watch film and they say, you know what? It's easy for me to sit back and say, hey, this is what you should have done in that situation, right? But when the bullets is flying and you got to think on your toes while you're in it, it's a little different. It's a little different aspect of it. So,
Are
um,
some of the best coaches the ones that have kind of like prepared you? Like, I always heard like stories like Bill Belichick would kind of do that, like prepare you to be uncomfortable.
yeah. So the best teams that I've been around are teams who make practice harder than the game, right? Because if
Mm,
I throw every single thing at you I possibly can in practice, when you get to the game, it's going to become second nature to you. And I
yeah.
think that's why I've been successful in a place like Calgary and with their coaching staff is because that's how they prepare us, right? In practice, I'm going to give you every single possible look I think you possibly could get and ingrain it into you. So when the game comes, whatever bullets they decide to throw, you're prepared for it, right? You
Mm,
know what's going to come. You know how to handle it. I've given you the keys. Now again, it's like how it was in New England. If I give you the if I give you the keys to the car, how you drive it, that's all dependent upon you, right? If you
right.
listen to what I told you, you know how to read the signs, then you'll know how to drive, right? But if I tell you this is a stop sign and you confuse it with a yield sign, then hey, that's on you, brother. What happens after that? So
Right. Right.
yeah, so that's essentially the good coaches and the good teams that you're around are the ones who essentially prepare you to see everything that you possibly can, and it's on you as a player to internalize that information and put it out there on the field.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I could talk forever about football, but I definitely want to give you a chance to you promote. Where can everyone find you again?
You can find me on Twitter at 6bonecrusher3. You
Hmm.
can find me on Instagram at 6bonecrusher4. I'm working on changing that 4 to a 3, but I don't want to lose my blue check.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can find me on Instagram 6bonecrusher4. My training page on Instagram is live from the trap 63.
Mhm.
So that's my football training page where I'm gonna start posting a lot of stuff, business wise in my training endeavors. And I'm pretty much on everything. I got a fan page on Facebook, Derek Bone Crusher Dennis on Facebook. I'm pretty much on every social media platform you can think of, except for TikTok. I haven't gotten to that yet. I got to figure TikTok out, but um,
I
I'm
hear you
pretty
on that
much
one.
everywhere. So my DMs are always open. You can always reach out to
Awesome.
me. I'm always eager to answer questions and have chats about it, anything and any and everything. Again, my driving force is just educating people on
Absolutely.
the lifestyle that we live as athletes, right? It's not a it's not everybody's not Tom Brady. Everybody doesn't get that luxury. So it's important to educate the fans on what we go through on a day-to-day basis so that they have a better understanding of what's behind that veil to kind of, humanize us as athletes as opposed to treating us like guys on a pedestal.
Right. Right. Or just another commodity. Just like, oh well, he's not on my
Yeah.
team. Yep. Exactly.
Right. Right.
Well, I definitely appreciate it. Thanks again, and I'm definitely going to be, watching the CFL more closely now. And yeah, thanks again.
I appreciate the time, man. I appreciate the time, man. Anything, just I'll let your boy. I'm here.
Very good. Thanks again. And once again, this has been NFL Outdated. And thanks again, Derek.
No problem.